Hello, friends. Afghanistan continues to stay in the news, this time for the simmering humanitarian crisis that arose following the capture of Kabul by the Taliban in mid August. The Taliban are now urging the world for recognition, but the biggest obstacle appears to be the United States. Not only has Washington predicated recognition on several prior actions, but it also has frozen nearly $10 billion that belong to the state of Afghanistan. This, by implication, has also choked the international banking possibilities of Afghanistan. Neither can the government nor the Afghan traders and investors transact internationally, and it constitutes over 60% of Afghanistan's banking. It has nearly paralyzed the Taliban regime, and right now, millions of dollars are being flown into Afghanistan in cash to help international NGOs such as the United Nations, its affiliated organizations, and European Union related organizations to reach out to the people who are in dire need of assistance. Lots of edible stuff is flowing through Pakistan, as well as dollars which are being smuggled out of Pakistan into Afghanistan, and primarily the international NGOs are somehow acquiring those dollars through the third party, which is usually illegal transactions. But this is what they need at the moment urgently to acquire food, medicine, and whatever is needed by the people of Afghanistan. Most of them, there are millions, several millions, are now facing poverty, joblessness, and starvation in a very harsh winter. But the key issue confronting the international community is whether only humanitarian assistance can sustain the state of Afghanistan with over 1 million public sector employees. Economist and a former World Bank official, Harun Sharif, proposes some transitional mechanisms to help Afghan people sail through a very severe winter.
This is an extraordinarily complicated situation where the regime is not recognized internationally. It is under sanctions, under the terrorism and other. So doing transaction has become extremely complicated. Now in this, the only window I see is that there is a real and present danger of a humanitarian crisis of a huge magnitude emerging in Afghanistan because of the withdrawal of funds, because of the lack of capability in the new government, and also the fear of people to do trade with Afghanistan because the permissions are needed under the international conventions. So we need to do a 1 to 2 years of a transitionary arrangement under the humanitarian window where we can facilitate trade. We can also facilitate some kind of food for work programs, because just transferring cash will not solve the problem of humanitarian crisis, which is very visible. So what we need to do is, in order to fast track, we need to have permission to set up some banking system, which Pakistan can do because it was there before, and branches should be given permission for a specific transaction under the FATF regime, under the international clearance regimes, so that money can be transferred. The government in Afghanistan will be happy to use a private banking channel because of the desperate situation. The second part is that if we need to support trade, in the transit trade there are several clauses which confine to WTO and international agreements. We need to get a waiver for 1 to 2 years to facilitate Afghanistan trade, and for that Pakistan along with the neighboring countries should put this proposal on table to the Office of International Islamic Countries. We should put proposal to EU, and we should do proposal to the neighbors to put pressure on international community that don't make the current humanitarian assistance and trade conditional the way you do in normal situation.
Harun Sharif fears that the issue of recognition might linger on for quite some time, and all those countries sympathetic to the people of Afghanistan will have to join hands to circumvent the undeclared US sanctions on the Taliban regime. One such occasion is coming up in Islamabad with a big meeting of the Organization of Islamic Conference where over 55 countries will be represented, including possibly special envoys of all big countries, including the United States, Russia, and China. All these countries will be deliberating an urgent future course of action to prevent starvation, unemployment, and social unrest in Afghanistan. Now, limited access to funds has basically resulted in shrunken businesses. That means lesser jobs and social services, an imminent socio-economic crisis that may lead to internal turmoil is one of the possibilities, and the major objective of the OIC conference at Islamabad is also to prevent such an eventuality.